Do you want to do the roll first? Or do you want me to do the accessibility statement, Charlie, and all that?
Let's do the roll call first, please.
All right. So go ahead, Charlie. Please do the roll.
Steve Woelfel,
Steve Wolfer, representing Secretary and CEO of MassDOT, Fiandaca.
Pam Hasner,
Pam Hasner, representing Administrator Jonathan Gulliver, Mass DOT Highway Division.
Michael Lambert,
Here.
Jay DeGrasse,
Here.
Meredith Anderson,
Here.
Dan Salvucci,
Present.
Mary Waldron,
Representing President of the Council, Val Massard, present.
Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum present, 7 of the 8.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'll read the accessibility and the non-discrimination statements. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Microphones and telephones will be used by all speakers. If you would like these accommodations, please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833. And then the notice of non-discrimination rights and protections to beneficiaries with regard to the federal Title VI non-discrimination protections and the state non-discrimination protections is included on this meeting's agenda and is available on the Old Colony Planning Council website at https oldcolony oldcolony planning planning.org, or please contact Mary Walden at 508-583-1833 for more information. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Lee Hartman from Plymouth has joined us as well, so we have 8 of the 8 present.
All right, excellent. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the MPO today? All right, seeing none. Next up is the minutes, and would like to see if I get a motion second, and I'll open up to any changes for the December 20th, 2022 Old Colony minutes.
I'll motion Dan Salvucci Whitman.
I'll second Mary Anderson, West Bridgewater.
All right, are there any changes or comments on the minutes? All right, seeing none. Charlie, you want to read the roll?
Yes, Steve Woelfel,
Yes.
Pam Hasner,
I abstain. I wasn't in attendance.
okay. Mike Lambert,
Yes.
Jay DeGrasse,
Yes.
Dan Salvucci,
Yes.
Lee Hartman,
Yes.
Mary Anderson,
Yes.
Mary Waldron.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you, everybody. We'll move on to agenda item 4, which is the update reports from that. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you very much, Chair. So far, in terms of ridership, we wrapped up our free fare program that stretched from Thanksgiving until New Year's. We saw about a 3% increase in ridership over the first 2 weeks in November, but we also managed to avoid a typical drop in ridership that we would see around the holidays and in December. So that was a successful program, we think. We started up our micro transit service in Rockland at the beginning of December. We're wrapping vehicles now to be branded for that service, get them out on the road, and then we'll do a full public launch toward the end of this month. And other than that, things are going along well here.
All right, any questions for Michael? Seeing none, thank you, Mike. All right, we'll move on to agenda item 5, which is updates from District 5. Pam, am I correct in assuming you'll do them because Barbara's not here?
Yes, yes,
All right.
I will. In reading the meeting minutes from last month, everything is up to date. I can go over them again, but nothing has changed. I did want to mention the Brockton 27 Crescent, which is 27, Quincy and Massasoit. It was listed that it's at 25% design, which is true, but it's been many years, and I believe the project scope was changing last time that we spoke. with the city and Old Colony, which was again quite some time ago. So it would be helpful to have some sort of a coordination meeting just to see where that project is. I can give you some additional updates on projects that are not programmed. The Stoughton Turnpike Street, there was a design public hearing, and we are moving toward the 75% design. That's a fairly major project. And Easton corridor improvements at where 123 and 138 are coincident, basically from Stonehill through the 3 intersections heading to the south. We do have a scope. We have a design consultant under contract for that, and we will be moving ahead with that. And I also wanted to mention, let me just find it here, the Brockton 123 Pearl and I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought, but Stone Hill Road, right beyond Route 24. We do also have a design consultant on that project, and we will be starting design. And the project manager will be reaching out to the city and Old Colony so we can have a coordination meeting.
All right, anyone have any questions for Pam on these projects or any other ones? All right, thanks, Pam.
Thank you.
We'll move on to agenda item 6, which is federal fiscal year 2023 to 2027 tip amendments or adjustments. Charlie, I believe we do have one, correct?
Yes, so we'll defer to Bill McNulty, the TIP project manager on this.
All right, go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we do have a proposed tip amendment today that we've probably called Amendment 1. So this amendment is to program some projects that were recently announced through the Commonwealth Community Transit Grant Program. That program recently announced their grant awards across the Commonwealth, and this region is the recipient of 4 awards. So we do need to, this is an amendment, so we do need to amend the tip to program these funds, these projects. So if you want to just jump to the next page, sure. And next page. And next page. Okay, thank you. So these are the 4 projects that have been awarded through the Community Transit Grant Program that we're seeking to amend our existing 23 to 27 tip to program in these funds. The first one is for Bridgewater Council on Aging. That is for operating assistance as well as software upgrade. Total cost on that is $27,600, and that's an 80-20 split. So there'd be $22,080 in federal funds, and the remaining balance local. And the remaining projects here are all 50-50 split. So for Brockton Area Transit, they received an award grant for $275,000. Wow.
That's to expand service to Rockland. And so that's a 50-50 split. So it's $137,500 federal funds, the rest local. Old Colony Planning Council received a grant for $60,000 to support their volunteer transportation program, namely mileage reimbursement. So that's $30,000 federal, $30,000 local, and then finally, but not least, South Shore Community Action Council, they received an award for $250,000, and that's $125,000 federal and the remaining local. So let me go to the next page, Sean. So this is a look at the transit section of our tip for federal fiscal year 2023. So you can see two areas of shading here. The yellow shading, that's the recent tip adjustment that was endorsed by this board last month. That was to adjust the total project costs for Brockton Area Transit Project from 100,000 to 127,000. And accordingly adjusting the RTA cap funds. And then finally, so down the bottom, see the green shading. These are projects that we're looking to add in. So I'll note that these are additions of new projects. They're from discretionary grant awards. They do not bump any projects in the existing tip. They don't alter funding in the existing tip. So this like just completely new addition. So it's not changing anything in the existing tip. It's just adding in these projects. So that's the summary of that. So I'm happy to entertain any questions at this time. If not, ask that the MPO consider this and consider releasing this for a public review and comment period for potential endorsement at the next meeting in February.
All right, can I get a motion, a second to release for public comment, then I'll open it to questions?
I'll motion it, Dan Salvucci, Whitman.
I'll second it, Mary Anderson, West Bridgewater.
Anyone have any questions for Bill?
Bill, I just wanted to offer my thanks to the chair and to MassDOT for provision of the community transit grant to expand the service in Rockland.
All right.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? All right, Charlie, you want to read the roll?
Yes, Steve Wolfle,
Yes.
Pam Hasner,
Yes.
Mike Lambert,
Yes.
Lee Hartman,
Yes.
Jay DeGrasse,
Yes.
Dan Salvucci,
Yes.
Mary Anderson,
Yes.
and Mary Waldron.
yes,
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bill, for that. Now we'll move on to the agenda item 7, which is performance-based planning and MassDOT proposed performance measures and targets. Charlie, who's doing, I see Bill is going to be part of this, right? And is anyone else
Yes.
helping Bill?
It's a team presentation. Bill's doing PM1. I believe Jack Moran is doing PM2, and Derek and Raisa are taking care of PM3.
All right, let's start with you, Bill, for PM1.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think everyone in this meeting is probably well familiar with these, but if not, so back in 2016, US DOT required that both state DOTs and MPOs develop performance management targets. Those are broken into 3 categories. So PM1 that I'll talk about in a moment, PM2 and PM3. So PM1 are safety performance targets aimed at reducing fatalities and serious injuries on the transportation network. PM2 refers to infrastructure conditions and maintaining the system in a certain state of good repair. And then PM3 is system performance. So travel times, travel time reliability, kind of metrics. So as far as MPOs go, so MPOs have the option of developing their own targets or adopting statewide targets. And since this rule went into effect in 2016, the Old Colony MPO, as well as all the other MPOs in the Commonwealth, we've opted to adopt the statewide targets. We have an excellent working relationship with the Commonwealth, and it just makes sense across the board to kind of all work together on achieving the statewide target. So the targets presented today, these were developed as statewide targets, and we're ultimately asking the MPO to adopt these. So if you want to go forward, Sean, forward again. And again. Okay, so PM1, like I said, this is aimed at reducing fatalities and serious injuries on the network. There are 5 metrics in this, total number of fatalities, the fatality rate, the total number of serious injuries, the rate of serious injuries, and then the total number of non-motorized fatalities. That last one, non-motorized, so, pedestrians and bicyclists, we don't do a rate for that because we don't have confidence in the number of people who walk or bicycle on a daily basis. So it's really difficult to do a rate. Whereas as far as vehicular traffic, it's easier to do a rate because we have the VMT. So as I've talked about at JTC and to this board as well to an extent, in recent years, so beginning with the pandemic, we saw a reversal in reversal in trend in the decline in fatalities, serious injuries on the network. After years of steady decline, beginning in the pandemic, there was increase in fatalities and serious injuries. I think a lot of people are just kind of still studying the causation of that. So it did present a little bit of a challenge in setting new targets, as the targets are based on 5-year averages. But ultimately, what the Commonwealth decided to do was look at the overall trend and focus on that 17 through 2021. And with that, it still showed a overall decrease. And you can see in that chart there, I mean, it's still, despite the last couple of years, the overall trend has been decreasing, and it should decrease. I mean, it does, with all the measures the Commonwealth and federal government have done in safety programs as well as safer vehicles, the trend should continue to go down despite this, blip in the pandemic. So with that, the target for 2023 is a slight decrease in the total number of fatalities for 355 statewide, and that results to the resulting target fatality rate would be 0.59 fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. And if you want to go to the next one, Sean. This one, it's just like the previous graph, but this one's showing serious injuries. So again, same methodology. Looking at 17 to 21, the target for 2023, again, slight decrease from down to, so the target is 2,569 serious injuries across the state, and that equates to a rate of serious injuries of 4.30, 4.3 per 100 million VMT. And then finally, go on the next one. So this is showing the total number of fatalities for non-motorized travel. So again, anyone basically not in the vehicle, and we're projecting a decrease or projecting a target that reflects decrease down to 437 fatalities statewide. So those are the targets that we're looking to adopt for this MPO. I can probably just turn it over to PM2, and then at the end, if anyone has any questions, I can answer them.
Actually, Bill, why don't we do this? Did anyone have any questions of Bill
Sure.
and PM1? It'd be
Okay.
easier to do it each one.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, I don't see any questions for PM1. All right, Jack, you want to go
Thank you.
into PM2? Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Can I share screen?
Yes, 1 second. Okay, you should be able to share your screen now.
Okay. That work? Okay, great. All right, well, thanks for the opportunity this morning. Gonna go through a few slides here. First, starting with just a background on the PM2 measures themselves, a quick review on the first performance period, and then we'll go into the pavement targets and the bridge targets. So for background, the PM2 measures infrastructure condition cover pavement and bridge condition on the national highway system. Pavement is split between the interstate and non-interstate NHS, with both categories being rated for good condition and poor condition. The actual rating is based on federal guidance. We effectively measure and collect pavement condition for the entirety of the national highway system, including those portions owned by municipalities, reported annually. And during the performance periods, this data is used through the HPMS system to come up with a calculated quantity of NHS in that condition state of good or poor. So this is in addition to the pavement serviceability index that MassDOT has used for quite a number of years, and which we rely upon for programming in our CIP. So just for a little bit of context here, we do see in the few years that we've been working with these two measures in concert, we've seen a correlation between the two. Our PSI measure is good, excellent, fair, poor. The federal measure is good, fair, poor. And kind of what we see is that a little bit of the poor in our context would be fair, and some of our good and excellent would be fair in the federal measure. So that's a little bit of a inside baseball discussion, but the point is that, you know, we do see a correlation between the two measures. On the bridge side, again, national highway system only. And as many of you are probably familiar, this measurement looks at the size of the bridges as described by area. So effectively, we have somewhere in the order of magnitude of 28 million square feet of national highway system bridges in Massachusetts. And again, that's measured as the deck area, the footprint of the bridge. And you take that denominator and you calculate the amount that's in good condition. And that's your good percentage, and likewise you sum up the area of all your poor bridges, and that's your poor area, or poor condition rather, that fractional percentage. So any one of the categories of bridge condition could trigger that. So it's not just if the deck area is in poor condition, it's just essentially if any one of those indicators are rated as poor, then the entire bridge is poor. So this is the second performance period, and the first one we went through for based on 2019 conditions, which was, we call it the 2020. I'm not sure if that's consistent with how everyone's looking at it. And then the 22 would have been the 2021 conditions. So moving on, just a little bit of a retrospective on how we did. There was some phased incorporation of the measures. So I'm going to breeze through this a little bit, but there's a couple things to note. I'm just going to focus on 21 here because there was some phased implementation through 2019. Bridge conditions roughly translated to what we expected on the good side and on the poor side. We marginally missed the poor condition target for 21. And you can see in the notes here, it was by about 3 bridge areas on poor condition. So we definitely missed the target, but in the great scheme of things, I think we're pretty comfortable with our ability to, at least in that case, to predict performance. I will note that because this is an area-based measure on bridges, it is highly sensitive to the size of the bridge, and that's the purpose of the measure, including area. Average size NHS bridge is about 13,000 square feet, but we have bridges in the inventory that exceed 100,000. So on any given year, this measure is very sensitive to a particular bridge becoming becoming structurally deficient or becoming good for that matter. And that's why we like this measure, because we do have great variation in the size of bridges. This measure really brings that out. On the interstate side, very comfortable with conditions on the interstate at the moment. Our targets were in line with what we expected for conditioned and what it turned out to be. On the non-interstate side, it's a little more complicated here. We'll get into some of the specifics in a minute, but effectively the measure was initially rolled out using IRI only. Going forward, it will be using full distress condition, which effectively means cracking, running, rattling. These other types of indices or other types of conditions will be folded into the larger indices. We did have an issue with the upload of our most recent pavement data. This is something we need to work through with pavement with Federal Highway, but the 2021 actuals I'm showing here represent a preliminary value because of those challenges that I spoke of. We think they're representative of the actual network, but there were some issues with translation of data. So again, this is just really to give you guys an idea of where we're at with basically predicting conditions through these measures. So moving on, starting with the pavement targets, this was just a quick chart we threw together to give an idea of, on the interstate side, where the interstates exist. You can see there's not even distribution among the regions, but I think the Old Colony interstate is 495 in Brockton at the vicinity of Route 24. There's approximately 7 miles that are accounted for of the interstate system within Old Colony. On the non-interstate side, this chart shows similarly non-interstate pavements by region and by ownership. I'll actually have the actual Old Colony numbers, I believe, on the next chart. Next slide. So as I mentioned, on interstate, 7 lane miles of interstate pavements within Old Colony. Non-interstate, there's about 475 lane miles of non-interstate NHS. That represents about 7% of the total statewide inventory, and about 122 miles of that are owned by municipalities. Just trying to give you an idea on Old Colony pavements to the statewide. We don't currently have the ability to express pavements within the federal measure at the regional level. So in lieu of that, what we're displaying here are and non-interstate pavements using our pavement serviceability index. This is really just for context here. I think what this demonstrates, or is intended to demonstrate, is that there's not consistency for non-interstate pavements between ownership. So the columns here, we have basically statewide conditions for NHS pavements. The next column over is those pavements within just Old Colony. And then finally, the non-interstate NHS pavements within Old Colony that are municipally owned. So this does kind of go to that fact that municipal ownership versus state ownership, there is tend to have disparity with state NHS being in better condition than municipal, but that is really not a surprise to anybody, I don't think. And this is a underlying reason for the municipal pavement program that we've been running over the past year. So that really is what we're targeting through that program is getting state numbered roads, but primarily national highway system roads addressed by the state that are owned by municipalities. So a lot to talk about there, but I just wanted to give you guys a little more context on how these measures and how these inventories are within the region. So to the targets here on interstate, we are basically being a little bit cognizant of a observed decreasing trend on interstate good condition. Over 19 through 21, we saw about a 0.5% drop. And we're being a little bit cautious here in recognition of that. We have some more comprehensive, more rehabilitation focused projects coming out in the near term that, and that's in contrast to some more less costly preservation projects that we've been doing recently. So for that reason, we're just hedging our bets a little bit on 23. And, of course, we'll be looking at confirming those targets, the second round target at that point as we see the conditions manifest. On the poor side, we're actually being a little more aggressive. We had been in our previous performance period, we had a 4% threshold for poor, and we're kind of cutting that. We are cutting that in half down to 2%. With a little bit more experience under our belt. On the non-interstate side, again, this is really kind of new ground for us, and we're still trying to understand the sensitivity of the measure. With the full distress implementation, we are choosing to be somewhat conservative here, and even though our base conditions are about 33.9% good, we're gonna hold a 30% target in 23. And similarly on the poor side, given those challenges with the data that I mentioned, we're kind of being a little conservative and holding at 5% here. So I'll pause here real quick for pavement. I know I just threw a bunch of information at you, but I just want to see if there's any comments or questions.
All right, anyone have any questions? I don't see any, Jack. Why don't you keep going?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good job.
Moving on to bridge. Again, similar chart here, just demonstrating the share of NHS bridges by region. With respect to Old Colony, there are 58 National Highway System bridges within the Old Colony borders, 3 of which are owned by municipalities and the remainder owned by MassDOT. This represents about a little more than a percent of the overall state bridge National Highway System inventory. Old Colony conditions far better than statewide conditions, given the small number of bridges, but for reference. On the target side, I don't have to probably go too far into the needs of bridges within Massachusetts and how we're investing the BIL and just before that, the Next Gen Bridge program. So we at MassDOT are really ramping up the delivery of projects funded within those funding sources, and some of them have already hit the street, primarily the maintenance projects and some site-specific preservation, and following on with the more comprehensive rehabilitation and replacement projects starting in 24, 25, 26. So the point of that is on good bridges, you really only increase that number through replacements. And oftentimes when we're rehabilitating a bridge, it won't necessarily get to good condition. It would be on the higher end of fair. So really to influence that good number, you have to be doing a lot of replacements. Replacements are the projects that take the longest lead time in terms of design. So we're not expecting to see that number increase dramatically through until the latter half of the decade, when the bridges, these new bridge projects are completed in construction. They have their initial inspections, and the data is hitting the database. So those are kind of like the mechanics here at play. And that's why we've chosen a fairly flat target on the good side. And really it's a similar story on the poor side. We've certainly received monies for bridges within the state, but it's not a light switch. And on the poor measure, you're influenced by 2 things: your ability to reduce the amount of bridges becoming poor, and that's really your preservation, and then your ability to reduce the existing backlogs through rehabilitation and replacement. So Preservation has a little bit longer. It doesn't happen overnight. You gotta get to the bridge. You gotta put the preventative action in place, and then that affects the life cycle. So that takes a little bit of time. And the same is true on the backlog approach. Rehabs, replacements, a couple of years to get those into construction and get those bridges off the backlog. So again, with this just being 2 and 4 year targets, you know, a lot of that is just what's in construction now effectively versus what we plan to advertise in the next coming years. So at this point, we're hoping to keep the ship afloat, steady state here, keep these measures in check, and not see any further decline on bridge conditions. And that's what you're seeing by these targets. So, okay, I think that was my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions anybody has.
All right, anyone have any questions for Jack? PM2. All right, I don't see any questions, Jack.
Thank you very much.
So let's
Good
move
job.
on. Sorry, Dan, you good? All right, everyone's
No,
good?
yeah, it was a good job. Good
Okay.
presentation.
All right, let's move on to PM3, which I believe is Raisa, right?
Yes.
Go ahead, take it away.
So hello everyone, my name is Raisa Kwame from MassDOT's Office of Transportation Planning, and today I'll be presenting with Derek Cravat on the system performance measures all state DOTs and MPOs are required to develop and endorse per federal regulations. Since we have presented on federal performance measures for the past few years, many of you are probably familiar with the process. As a refresher, the federal performance measures regulations passed in 2016 include 3 overarching categories: PM1 safety, PM2 pavement and bridge condition, and PM3, which this presentation focuses on, which is a catch-all category called system performance measures that includes improving the transportation system's efficiency and reducing congestion. The specific measures included under PM3 are reliability, congestion, and emissions reduction. Reliability includes travel time reliability on both the interstate highway system and non-interstate roads, as well as truck travel time reliability to evaluate the efficiency of freight movement. Congestion includes 2 measures: non-SOV travel and peak hour excessive delay within the whole urbanized area. Emissions reductions is a measure that captures reducing emissions specifically from CMAQ-funded projects. The first measure I'll be presenting is level of travel time reliability, which refers to the percentage of miles on roadways that are considered reliable. It's important to note that reliability in this context does not necessarily mean uncongested. It is more a measure related to the predictability of travel time. So for roadways consistently congested, it would be considered reliable under this measure. Whereas if a road is perfectly clear on one day and highly congested on the next, leading to unpredictable travel times, it would be considered unreliable for this purpose. With regard to the reporting timeline, MassDOT submitted statewide reliability targets to the Federal Highway Administration on December 16, 2022, and all MPOs are required to adopt these targets or establish their own within 6 months of the state. We are seeking for the MPO board to review these targets so that the updated targets can be endorsed and included within the Regional Transportation Improvement Program and Regional Transportation Plan, both of which need to be endorsed over the next few months. So this slide has more detail on how to calculate the level of travel time reliability. I won't go over this in too much depth, but the process involves measuring different travel time percentiles on different roadway segments at different times of the day, comparing these travel times to see how much variation there is, and then aggregating the percentage of roadway miles considered reliable based on these calculations. Since the measure is reported as the percentage of all roadway miles considered reliable statewide, we consider an increasing percentage moving in the right direction for this measure. The next measure in the reliability category is truck travel time reliability, which measures the amount of time it takes for trucks to drive the length of a road segment. The reporting timeline is the same for this one. MassDOT submitted its targets on December 16th. TTTR is calculated in a somewhat similar way to the level of travel time reliability, but is reported as an index instead of a percentage. Different percentiles of travel times within a segment are compared to assess how much variation there is, and the index is developed. Travel time reliability is reported at both the interstate and non-interstate level. The data for interstates is shown on this slide. On the next slide, I think. The first year we started to collect data. Sorry, 1 second. The first year we started to collect data on this measure was in 2017. And as you can see, the trend between 2017 and 2019 was heading in the wrong direction, with roadways becoming less reliable during that period. In 2020, as a result of significantly fewer vehicles on the road as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, travel time reliability shot up to 94.4% that year. In 2021, reliability went down slightly, but remained much higher than pre-pandemic levels. Since these were very atypical years with extenuating circumstances, they were disregarded for the purposes of target setting. Instead, MassDOT chose to develop 2- and 4-year targets that represented improved reliability over pre-pandemic levels while accounting for external factors, such as continued work from home trends and other MassDOT initiatives that aim to improve travel time reliability. The 2024 target of 74% represents a 5% increase over 2019 levels. The 2026 target of 76% represents an even greater increase to reflect MassDOT's goals of improving reliability. Setting the non-interstate travel time reliability targets involved both aiming for improvement over the prior targets while also assessing the accuracy of the current trend line. The trend line for non-interstate travel time reliability showed small improvements prior to the pandemic, increasing from 80.1 in 2017 to 82.8 in 2019. As with other reliability data, non-interstate reliability was high in 2020 and 2021 due to lower VMT. At the time the targets were set in fall of 2022, the year-to-date 2022 figure showed 89%, which was an improvement over the 2021 figure of 87.9%. However, MassDOT felt that the year-to-date 2022 figure at the time of target setting may have been a little too optimistic, since non-interstate reliability can be particularly unpredictable. As such, a conservative approach was used to set targets that were slightly lower than the trend line, but were still higher than the prior target of 80%. This was the logic behind the 2-year target of 85% and the 4-year target of 87%. So the slide shows a trend line of truck travel time reliability, or TTTR. Unlike the previous 2 reliability metrics, which show the percentage of road miles that are reliable, TTTR is shown just as an index, comparing the 95th percentile travel time just of trucks carrying freight to the 50th percentile travel time of trucks. Since a lower number indicates less variability in travel time, the direction we want the trend line for this measure to go is down. With regard to the trend line, you can see that there was a bit of variation prior to the pandemic between 2017 and 2019, with some improvements in TTTR between 2018 and 2019. However, since the pandemic, 2021 and 2022 data show that TTTR is worsening slightly, going up to 1.61 in 2021 and 1.64 in 2022. As such, to set targets in this area, MassDOT sought to show improvement over the prior target of 1.85 and set a 2024 target of 1.80 and a 2026 target of 1.75. These targets still aim to improve upon the last target set while also being achievable given the current trend line. The next performance measure area that is required to be adopted is a measure of congestion called peak hour excessive delay. In this context, excessive delay is defined as 20 miles per hour or 60% of the posted speed limit, whichever is greater. In a 55 miles per hour zone, 60% would be 33 miles per hour. So if that is the average travel time on the NHS, that is what would be used. Since Old Colony MPO has communities in the Boston urbanized area, it is required to adopt these measures. There is a lot of information on this slide, but I'd like to point you to the red text, which indicates the annual hours of peak hour excessive delay for each year. In 2018, peak hour excessive delay, or the number of hours an average resident of the Boston urbanized area spent in traffic, was 22.87. In 2019, this went up to 25.23 hours spent in traffic per year. In 2020, this dropped as a result of the pandemic to 12.74, And in 2021, we saw a slight uptick as traffic returned to 18.03. This slide shows a, oh, yeah, I think we can go to the next slide. So this slide shows a graph. So this slide shows a graph based representation of the numbers on the prior slide, as well as MassDOT's 2024 and 2026 targets. Given the trend line of increased peak hour excessive delay and uncertainties associated with travel patterns post-pandemic, MassDOT decided to set a 2024 target of 24 and a 2026 target of 22. Next slide, please. The next measure area that is required to be adopted is the percentage of non-single occupancy vehicle travel. This measure is set using census journey to work data, indicating the mode people take to get to work. Similar to peak hour excessive delay, the reporting is required on the UZA level. MassDOT set targets on December 16th for this area. So in the next slide, this shows.
Sorry, I think this might be an older version of the presentation. We took some of these out, so you could just go to the non-SOV slides. Thank you. Sorry about that.
So this table shows the census journey to work data for the Boston UZA. We are interested in the inverse of the drove alone category to show how many people are taking modes besides SOVs to travel to work. As you can see in the table, this includes modes such as public transit, walking, bicycling, and working from home, etc. So given the increasing trend line for non-SOV travel, MassDOT chose to set targets that continue this increase, which is going in the right direction. The 2024 target is 38.77, and the 2026 target is 39.81. So the final measure required to be adopted is emissions reductions. So emissions reductions are in kilograms per day. So yeah, I think in terms of emissions reductions, this is the data we have. I would pass on the presentation to Derek if there's more information or any questions. Thank you.
Sure. Yep. Yeah. Just real quick on this last one. The emissions reduction measure that we're required to report on is very specific, but nonetheless, I think required for MPOs to adopt. So there's not too much relevance of this one for the Old Colony region, but the emissions reduction measure requires MassDOT to report on the estimated emissions reductions specifically from projects funded with CMAQ, which is Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Funds, only in communities that are considered air quality maintenance or non-attainment areas. And we only have 5 of those in Massachusetts, none of which are in the Old Colony region. And among those 5, we only had 2 projects that are actually CMAQ funded. So those are the projects you see on the slide here. So, just presenting this more for informational purposes as part of our PM3 measures, but it's a very specific and kind of technical measure. So just wanted to make folks aware since it's part of the regulation, but these are the, reduction numbers we see in the target that we set, even though, again, not too much relevance for the region here. But I think that's the last slide. Yep, this is just a summary of the targets Regis presented and the emissions reductions measure there. So I think we'd just be asking the MPO to either endorse these targets that were set, or there's always a potential to establish their own. I think staff recommendation is to adopt MassDOT targets, but I'll hand it back to the chair and then go about that next step. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Reese, and thank you, Derek. Anyone have any questions on PM3? All right, seeing none, does someone want to make a motion, a second, to adopt performance measures 1, 2, and 3?
I'll make that motion, Dan from Whitman.
I'll second. Mary Anderson, West Bridgewater.
All right, are there any questions? Just
Yeah, I have one question. Is Old Colony, is the staff comfortable with it? With the regulations and achieving them?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. That's all answers my question. Thank you.
anyone else have any questions? All right, Charlie, you want to read the roll, please?
Steve Wolfle,
Yes.
Pam Hasner,
Yes.
Lee Hartman,
Yes.
Mike Lambert,
Yes.
Jay DeGrasse,
Yes.
Dan Salvucci,
Yes.
Mary Anderson,
Yes.
Valerie Massard.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
All right, thank you to all our presenters. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 8, which is an update on the long-range plan for 2050. And I believe this is Bill, Charlie, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's just an update for the MPO, where we stand with development of the LRTP. It's well underway, as you all know. Kind of, we started, so we kind of have the framework kind of set now with the goals and objectives and planning scenarios. That was kind of the first stage of developing this plan update. And now that we're there, kind of moving on to developing the specific sections of the LRTP, so highway, transit, safety, regional profile, and the like, environmental. We have launched a public survey that's been open for a few weeks now. You can see on your staff report the link for that survey that people are invited to go and take. It mirrors a lot the statewide survey that was done for the statewide plan update. Mainly because we do want to incorporate local results from that statewide survey and supplement it with this local regional survey. So in doing so, having a greater data set to work with. And so we largely use the same questions. That way it's, apples to apples comparison. There are a couple of additional like regional specific questions. So we do encourage folks to, when they have the time, to take that survey, and that survey will be open through mid-February. Beyond that, so we're continuing to work with our fellow MPOs and UMass Donahue Institute on the development of finalizing the socioeconomic estimates for housing, households, population, and employment through bench years 2030, 2040, and 2050. That product's a little bit delayed. We had hoped to have it last year. It's still being finalized. Hopefully having a final set in April, just in time for the finalization of a draft that we'd send out to public comment, public review. So it's kind of up against the wall, and unfortunately, we've been waiting on that data to develop and calibrate our own regional travel demand model. So that's been an ongoing effort. So beyond that, so the survey, the socioeconomic data, staff is actively going out right now, evaluating highway surface conditions for the to develop pavement conditions analysis, and that'll help develop planning scenarios, funding scenarios on what it will take to maintain the system at certain good states of good repair going forward through 2050. So that's underway. Public outreach. So we're looking to have a mobility focused group meeting with us, Brockton Area Transit, and MassDOT. Looking to have that by the end of this month. We'll be having public information sessions. So we'll have probably at least 2 webinars and some public information events. So we, like for example, having a table at the Brockton Area Transit Intermodal Center where we can meet and engage commuters and get their input. So that public engagement component is underway. Contacting local and regional statewide stakeholders to consult with them and get their input. So this is where we are at right now. We're still on target for a draft plan this spring. The target has always been April, still April, and so we're looking to have at least internally have a draft plan in April, and if not, going out to public review in April, then May at the latest. But so we're on track, we're on schedule, and if anyone has any questions on it right now, happy to answer them, or if offline, you can always shoot me an email or call me if you have any questions.
All right, anyone have any questions for Bill? All right, thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 9, administrative matters of the business and date and time of next meeting. Charlie?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two quick items for the attendees today. One is the USDOT has developed a checklist for discretionary grant preparation for federal 2023. And we were looking through this, and this is a really nice preparatory checklist and kind of a teeing up some of the questions that might come up as you're applying for some of these discretionary grants through the bipartisan infrastructure law. And there's a hyperlink there. Next slide. And there's actually 10 checkpoints here. And one is obviously to be familiar with the discretionary grant calendar itself, different grant timelines. Another item is to, hey, make sure you secure that local match. Next slide. And, one of the other items is to make sure that you have a grants.gov or the system award management account set up in advance, because sometimes that might take some time. And if you're applying for a grant near the deadline, you might not have that active account ready to go by the time you actually want to file that grant at the last minute. So we thought this was, a really nice checklist for communities and potential applicants to take a look at as they're looking at some of these discretionary grants. Next slide. And this just pans through some of the other items. So next slide. Next slide. And hey, last but not least, please save the date of February 21st, 2023 for the next meeting of the Old Colony MPO. And I see Mary has her hand up.
Go ahead, Mary.
I just want to weigh in. We our Jay Song is one of our provisional employees, new employees. He's on here today. It's also his birthday, or was his birthday yesterday. So just welcome aboard, Jay. He's a Bridgewater State University graduate, and we're happy to have him on board.
Well, welcome, Jay. Happy belated birthday from all of us. What's that? One item of business I have is the Innovation Conference will again happen at the DCU Center, May 2nd and 3rd of the dates. So it should be Tuesday, Wednesday that week. So, and the call for abstracts and stuff should start probably coming out in the next 24 hours. So just mark that on your calendar so you're planning on attending. And then we'll move on to agenda item 10, motion and a second to adjourn, please.
So moved, Dan from Whitman.
Second, Mary Anderson, West Bridgewater.
All right, all in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thanks, everybody. Got through a lot. Mary from Gatra has her hand up. Do you have something, Mary, or? All right. All right. So we're adjourned. Everyone be safe and enjoy your day. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you in February.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Take care.